Have you ever wondered how you can start mining Bitcoin? And hey, listen, I'm talking about 100% renewable Bitcoin mining that is environmentally friendly. In this podcast, Bitcoin mining expert Nico shares his insights on topics that are trending in the Bitcoin mining industry. From the concepts of 100% renewable hosting to the technical aspects of network hash rate, we're covering all of that in today's video. So first, let's start off by asking Nico some fun questions. The first question is, if you could have any superpower, what would it be and why?
Oh, wow. Yeah, I think it's either flying or being invisible. I think being invisible and sneaking into meetings would be interesting, but flying and having the freedom to fly would also be nice. It's the first time I get this question.
Yeah, I feel like there are a lot of questions that can be asked, but this one isn't the normal one that you get asked when you're on a mining or a tech podcast. So it's a fun one to start with.
Yeah.
I got one other fun one, and then we'll dive into a lot of your articles. For everyone listening, this is going to be an incredible conversation, not only for the person who's really deep down the mining rabbit hole, the Bitcoin mining rabbit hole, but also for the people who are more on the surface, maybe don't know a lot of the nuances that people in the mining industry talk about. So this will be a great episode for you as well. Second question is, if you could time travel into the future, which person would you bring with you? You can bring anyone on the entire planet.
Yeah, I would like to bring my wife and kids. I mean, my family is very important for me, so I will bring them.
That's a good answer. So I want to talk initially about this article that you did on Paraguay and the 100% renewable hosting. But to start, to catch everyone up to speed when we talk about hosting, could you pretend that I'm like 10 years old and you're trying to explain what hosting is?
Yeah, I think it's best to describe as renting out a place for your miners. So you don't have space at home, or you cannot deal with the noise, the heat, the maintenance, you're not technical, then it's interesting to put your miners elsewhere. It's convenient, but it's also for many people a solution because they don't have the financial means to build out their own site operation, or they don't have the technical skills, and often hosting services they can attain or obtain lower fees, right? Lower electrical fees. So if you're on a residential contract, the fees are much higher. But once you get at a certain threshold and you get access to industrial rates, it's much more attractive to mine, because electricity is the number one cost of your operation.
Yeah, and going off of the concept of energy, we've been seeing this whole conversation of a lot of miners wanting to move towards renewable energy sources. Mm-hmm. And this could be, for one, because of all the heat that miners are getting for not being run on renewable energy, but also from a pricing perspective. So from your point of view, what do you think are the important things that people should keep in mind if they're mining today, or if they're thinking about mining, as it relates to renewable energy?
Yeah, I think so. We in Paraguay work a lot with hydro energy, and hydro is quite stable. I think if you use natural gas, then you're more prone to the fluctuations in the market, right? So I think the stability and the predictability of your electrical cost is an important one. And I hope to see more and more mining in the solar and wind industry, that we can show the world that miners can have an interesting role to play in the build out of renewables by soaking up the excess power when there's not a lot of demand but high production, and also by balancing the grid, right? So hopefully we move more to that. But I do think renewables are the way to go. Whether we go 100% renewable, that's going to be taking a while. I think it's like the general energy transition, that it's a transition, and we also need like a different batch of energy providers or sources, I would say, to be able to do this transition.
It's interesting to see how this industry has evolved, not only just from an energy perspective, but from a hardware perspective. Mm-hmm. So I know that you've also written articles about the hardware markets, and I'm really, really excited for that. I've just got a couple more questions on Paraguay. So how do you end up there? Like, there are so many places around the world. What about Paraguay? You're like, this is the spot.
So I'm Dutch. I grew up in the Netherlands, but my wife is Argentine. So after 16 years of living in the Netherlands, she wanted to move back, and I moved with her. When I came here, I saw a lot of opportunity for mining because there's a lot of energy being produced, and there's a lot of energy that doesn't reach the market. So there's a lot of stranded energy and wasted energy. We started setting up mines or mining operations here in Argentina, but Argentina isn't the most favorable country for foreign investors. So it's mostly Argentine clients that we have. And so we started looking into the region, and Paraguay is a logical place because there's an abundance of energy. They produce 99.9% of their energy using hydropower. And there's a big access because they have the second biggest dam of the world. And next to that, another couple of big dams. So they produce a lot. It's not a big country. I believe there's 6 million people living there. So they don't consume it all. They sell a part to Brazil and to Argentina. But they're not making a lot of money on it. And Paraguay is a landlocked country, so it doesn't have access to the sea. So for other industries, it's not the most interesting country to set up camp, right? Because you don't have access to the sea, but also the domestic market is not that big. So I think there's little competition from other industries for this energy in Paraguay.
Seems like you've given it a lot of thought, which is good. I've heard quite a bit of things about miners looking at Paraguay, and I've only heard good things said about it. So it seems like you made a good choice there. So this conversation that we're about to dig even deeper into is one that it's hard for me to wrap my head around a lot of the times. And I'm someone who is pretty deep in the Bitcoin mining industry. And the reason why I feel like it's difficult is because you have all these different levers, and versus, many other markets, a lot of people on the surface are just looking at the price of Bitcoin. Then the miners inevitably have to look a couple layers deeper. They're looking at cost of the ASICs. They're looking at hash price, hash rate difficulty. They're looking at the cycles. They're looking at market sentiment, and so many things, even down to the mining coming online. And that's, I guess, the best question for you after just kind of putting all that out there would be, how do you make sense of all of this when you're trying to make decisions around hosting, around buying miners, around forecasting the price and the amount of revenue? Because there's so many different variables to account for. But if you're just trying to put it simply, what do you think is important to pay attention to, and what is more quote unquote noise that is given too much weight?
Well, I think first of all, it's important to accept that you're going to make mistakes, right? Many bought miners at a price that's not sustainable, or there's people who went into power purchasing agreements that were too high. There's going to be a moment in time when you mine that you make a mistake, let's say. So learning from those mistakes and not quitting because of the mistakes is, I think, important, because the mining industry is an industry in which you constantly need to learn and adapt. So in theory, it's very easy to talk about how to time the market, but in practice, it's also challenging, right? Because you also deal with available cash, for example. Maybe in the bull market, it's easier to get access to funds, but then you buy miners at a high price. I think this focus on cost is an important one, because you don't have influence on the Bitcoin price, nor the amount of hash rate coming online and the difficulty or the impact it has on difficulty. So focusing on the cost is an important one, and also try to plan accordingly, right? Like if it's a bull market, you make a lot of margins on your machines, but there's going to be a time that your machines are not efficient enough to compete for your rewards. So you need to plan ahead, and you can do that by scaling out, for example. And we talked about hosting. I also like to use hosting as a tool, let's say, to create a cash flow that can either cover some operational costs for your self-mining, or that allows you to save money so that you can invest in the expansion of your infrastructure or your miner fleet. So I think integrating hosting into your self-mining business is a very positive way of or a good way that allows you to plan your business in a solid way, in a sustainable way.
Sounds good. So I got one final question on this particular article on these topics as it relates to hash price and Bitcoin difficulty. And it really comes down to, at the end of the day, profitability, right? If you're a miner, you have a certain level of cost to operate and to acquire that hardware. And then you're going to be generating a certain amount of Bitcoin. And going back to the halving, that Bitcoin that you're generating is going to change based on the amount being distributed by the Bitcoin network. Right now, every 10 minutes, it's 6.25. But then also the amount of other miners on the network that you're competing with for that block reward. So with all that said, my question for you is, how does the hash price and mining difficulty impact the profitability of Bitcoin mining? And what factors should miners consider when deciding whether to invest in mining equipment?
Yeah, so during the peak of the bull market in 2021, we saw a hash price of 40 cents, and it went all the way down to 5 cents last year at the bottom of the bear. And right now we're around 8 cents. So I think it's important to understand that we're still looking at the margins at the bottom of the bear, right? However, between the end of 2021 and now, a lot of hash rate came online, so the difficulty increased also. So even though there's going to be a new bull market and hash price will go up again, my expectation is that it won't go back to the 40 cents mark because you have a higher competition now. More machines online competing for the same Bitcoin. And with regards to the halving, I think it's important to understand that price usually responds with a delay to the halving. So what we've seen in previous cycles is that after like 6 to 8 months after the halving is when Bitcoin starts increasing again, and usually it's the same period that hash price that it took hash price to come to the same level as it was previous to the halving. So planning accordingly for a period of let's say 6 months to a year of low margins is very important, and there's two ways to go about it. One is you build up sufficient reserves to survive this period. Well, I guess there's more options. You can also do low power mode, like increase the efficiency of your miners by putting less power into it. But also, when you look to purchase ASICs now, I would already assume like current hash rate cut in half. Like, is it still profitable if you cut current hash rate in half? If not, then you need to opt for another machine, or you need to find another place where energy is cheaper. So planning already now for the halving, and or even before now, like in the last couple of months, is an important one, because last thing you want to do is step in now thinking you hit the bottom of the ASIC market and then become unprofitable once the halving.
That couple minute segment right there has so much information, so much value in it, especially for someone who's a miner and knows how the cycles work, but also is thinking about decision making around it. Every single miner who is listening right now should go back and rewatch what you just said at least 2 times, because there's so much value there. I want to pick your brain for some predictions. So yeah. I'm not sure which one to start. And to preface it, the predictions are always difficult. I have like long-term views on where things are going, but the shorter term predictions are always tough. But when I have someone on the podcast who's has so much expertise on Bitcoin mining, hash rate, hash price, network difficulty, these types of things, I got to ask you for some predictions. So the first one, which is the obvious one that everyone's going to end up asking, is a price prediction around Bitcoin. And I don't want to constrain you by giving you an exact time. I want you to lay out a price prediction for the price of Bitcoin based on whatever timing you feel comfortable giving it in.
Yeah, that's...
I'm going to guess it's a lower prediction than Balaji's $1 million.
Yeah, I think it's like what I usually do for when I project for mining. Like I calculate things for clients. Like I always am very conservative. I assume a negative scenario, a neutral scenario in which Bitcoin stays at the same level, and then a positive scenario. But even the positive scenario usually is not even a new all-time high in the next 3 years. But I do believe we'll reach new all-time highs. I do believe we'll cross the 100,000 mark at a certain point. But I do think it's important to always stay conservative, because if it then overshoots, it's only in your benefit. And also, of course, it's good to dream a bit, but temper your dreams, because when Bitcoin starts being full bull again, then you also need to start selling if you want to, for example, buy a house or whatever. Like if you have a big number in your mind, then you might be disappointed at the end if you didn't sell anything in the bull market. I like personally, I have some financial goals, and like I want to achieve those, but I also like to put some Bitcoin on a ledger and stuff it away for my kids when they are ready to leave the house. They're 6 and 8 years old, so looking way into the future. But I think it would be great to give them at least one Bitcoin each, and that they can sell it in the future if they want to, or maybe buy a house with it. I don't know, but I think more than predicting, it's important to think of your own financial goals. And why are you in Bitcoin also, right? Like,
yeah. So can you give a price prediction with a time frame, or should we
yeah,
move on
so
to
I
the
think a new all-time high will be after the halving. Let's say, I expect a bit of the spark of the bull market, like the parabolic phase, somewhere end of 2024, and then we'll go into new all-time highs. I don't know. 2025, 100K, and we cross 100K.
That's a good one.
No financial advice.
Yeah. None of this is financial advice. Don't go and mortgage your house and buy Bitcoin. So that was it for today's video. On this channel, we upload content around Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining. So if that's of interest to you, subscribe. And if you want to hear about the New York Times misleading claims being exposed, click on this video right here. That's it for me today. I'll see you next time.
Inflation is transitory.